General questions, and we move now to First Minister's questions. Question number 1, Ruth Davidson.
Thank you. To ask the First Minister what engagement she has planned for the rest of the day.
First Minister.
Engagement is to take forward the Government's programme for Scotland.
Ruth Davidson.
Presiding Officer, last week Willie Rennie failed to get a single answer from the First Minister on whether the SNP will support full EU membership in its manifesto. He should have waited a week, because now we have two. Nicola Sturgeon's stated position is to be a full member of the European Union. Her MP's stated position is to leave the common fisheries policy. But full membership of the European Union means full membership of the common fisheries policy. Isn't that the case, First Minister?
First Minister.
Well, Ruth Davidson's clearly not been paying attention. The SNP has been consistent over many years in our criticisms of the common fisheries policy, and very clear about our intentions to see it fundamentally reformed. Our 2007 manifesto continued to work for withdrawal from the CFP. 2011, the CFP well past its sell-by date. The 2014 White Paper on Independence. Independence for Scotland in the European Union would give Scotland the opportunity to take a leadership role in reforming the common fisheries policy. So the reality here is it's the SNP that always stands up for Scottish fishing and always will stand up for Scottish fishing. And of course, the uncomfortable truth for Ruth Davidson is that it's successive Tory governments who have sold out the fishing industry. Remember the words. Remember the words. I know Ruth Davidson doesn't want to hear what's coming next, Presiding Officer. Remember the words of the Tories. In the wider UK context, the fishermen must be regarded as expendable. That's the Tory record on fishing. And of course, we know that the Tories are lining up to sell out fishing again, because the Brexit White Paper makes it clear that fishing will just be a negotiating chip in the Brexit talks. So the SNP stands up for fishing, Tories sell them out.
Ruth Davidson.
Priceless, Presiding Officer. She wants to quote internal SNP documents. Let me quote a document. It's Chapter 13. Chapter 13 of a little thing called the EU Conditions of Membership. And it says it requires the introduction and participation in the common fisheries policy, and it doesn't get much clearer than that. So let's spell out the complete absurdity of the SNP's position here, or should I say the positions. Firstly, it's the SNP's position that Brexit is a terrible threat to Scotland and that fishermen are better off being governed by the EU's hated common fisheries policy. That's the position that Angus Robertson outlined at the weekend when he said, "We're in favour of Scotland being a member state of the European Union and we're in favour of a reformed common fisheries policy." But it's also their Brexit position that Brexit is a sea of opportunity for our fishermen, and that we must avoid any policy, any practice, any regulation or any treaty which could return us to the common fisheries policy. And we know that because on Tuesday, Ailey Whiteford and Mike Weir, two of Mr Robertson's parliamentary colleagues, signed a pledge written by the Scottish Fishermen's Federation saying so. So can I ask the First Minister, is Mr Robertson wrong when he was on the telly at the weekend, or are Ms Whiteford and Mr Weir wrong? Or is it the SNP plan to try and say they're all right so that they think the people are so daft we won't notice?
First Minister.
Well, Ruth Davidson has managed to hold several different positions on Brexit all by herself. Brexit is a terrible threat to Scotland, is what Ruth says is the SNP's position. The problem for Ruth Davidson is that that used to be Ruth Davidson's position as well. Remember her screaming it from Wembley. But now, of course, it's different. She's fallen into line with Theresa May, and now Brexit is the greatest thing since sliced bread. You know, on this issue, Ruth Davidson flip-flops more than a fish being landed. Flip-flop, flip-flop on Brexit. The truth of the matter is that the SNP always has and always will stand up for fishing. You know, we've already heard about the Tories thinking fishing is expendable. Expendable. That was the word that Tories used about Scotland's fishing industry. But let's come more up to date and let's read the Brexit White Paper, paragraph 8.16. Given the heavy reliance on UK waters of the EU fishing industry, it's in both our interest to reach a mutually beneficial deal that works for the UK and for the EU's fishing communities. Let me translate that for Ruth Davidson. That means the Tories are lining up in these negotiations to sell out the fishing industry and allow European countries what they say that they don't want, which is access to Scottish fishing waters. The Tories are preparing to perpetrate a con on Scotland's fishermen. They will not get away with it. It's the SNP who stands up for our fishing industry.
Ruth Davidson.
Presiding officer, maybe Nicola Sturgeon's MPs didn't report back to her, but let me quote to her what the Chief Executive of the Scottish Fishermen's Federation told them and MPs at Westminster just last week. 2 Secretaries of State, 2 Ministers said the UK is leaving the EU and we'll leave the CFP and we will regain control of our fishing. She wants to go toe-to-toe over fishing. Let's bring that on. But Presiding officer, this week Mike Russell was in Brussels and he was speaking to fishing industry chiefs. And his pitch was that Scotland will leave the EU with the rest of the UK, but after independence it will go straight back in. But it will opt out of all of the things it doesn't like, including the common fisheries policy. And it is utter nonsense. So right now, we have SNP MPs and fishing communities saying the CFP is terrible and that Scotland would pull out. And at the same time, we've got Nicola Sturgeon standing up in Edinburgh, trying to win the vote of Remainers, saying they'd go straight back in. Doesn't even the First Minister see the utter hypocrisy here?
First Minister.
Utter consistency in the SNP's position over years on the common fisheries policy. What I see from the Tories is flip-flopping all the time on Brexit and on fishing. And if Ruth Davidson's argument today is that the Tories are not preparing to sell out the fishing industry, to use them as a bargaining chip in the negotiations that lie ahead, then I give Ruth Davidson the opportunity to explain in simple terms to the Chamber today what exactly the Brexit White Paper means when it says that the UK government wants a deal that works for the EU's fishing communities. What does that mean if it doesn't mean allowing Spain and other countries access to European fishing waters? Why can't Ruth Davidson be honest with the fishing community? The Tories are preparing to treat them as expendable all over again. It's the SNP that will always stand up for fishing. So what is it?
Ruth Davidson.
After Brexit, we'll be out of the CFP as members of her party that want to take us back in. But what we've got, Presiding Officer, what we've got is that the SNP saying they're in favour of joining the European Union, but the First Minister not confirming whether the SNP will back full membership in their manifesto. They say they're in favour of the common fisheries policy, except for MPs and fishing communities who say they're against it. And then we have the real whopper. In Scotland, we have Nicola Sturgeon saying the coming election hasn't anything to do whatsoever with independence. But from the broadcast studios of London, up pops Alex Salmond to confirm they want to use this election to demand a referendum that the rest of us don't want. So the First Minister thinks that on fishing, on EU membership and on independence, she can face both ways and promise all things to all people. Isn't it the case she's treating the electorate as fools?
First Minister.
Well, this election, of course, as I said yesterday morning, is an opportunity to determine who chooses Scotland's future. Is it a Tory government at Westminster, or is it this democratically elected Scottish Parliament? Exactly the same as Alex Salmond's comments yesterday afternoon. But let's get back to fishing, because what we've just seen here is Ruth Davidson all at sea, drowning in our fishing waters, because she can't explain, and Ruth Davidson really has to explain this in simple terms to Scotland's fishing communities. I gave her the opportunity once and she failed to do so. So I'm going to give her the opportunity again. What does it mean when the UK government says that they want a deal that works for the EU's fishing communities? That can only mean that the Tories are preparing to sell out Scottish fishermen, grant other European countries access to fishing waters and treat that vital Scottish industry as expendable once again. I think that is crystal clear from Ruth Davidson today. It's the SNP that will always, as we always have done, stand up for Scottish fishing.
Question number 2, Kezia Dugdale.
To ask the First Minister what engagement she has planned for the rest of the week.
First Minister.
Engagements to take forward the Government's programme for Scotland.
Kezia Dugdale.
Next week, voters will go to the polls to decide the future of local services, like our schools. The First Minister used to claim that education was her #1 priority, but even she doesn't claim that anymore. After 10 years of SNP government, Scottish education is facing challenges like never before. Since the SNP took office, there are 4,000 fewer teachers, 1,000 fewer support staff, and class sizes are bigger. International studies show that Scotland is declining in maths, in reading, and in science. John Swinney's response to this was to publish a mini manifesto repeating the very promises he's been breaking every year since 2007. So can the First Minister tell teachers, parents and pupils why they should believe the SNP this time around?
First Minister.
Well, education is my top priority. That's why Kezia Dugdale doesn't like to hear this, but that's why right now across Scotland, head teachers and teachers have in their hands £120 million of additional funding. That's why local government services are better off to the tune of £400 million under this SNP government. And I would say to Kezia Dugdale that she has zero, not a shred of credibility left on the issue of local government funding. Because for years, in her local government manifesto, published just days ago, she complains about the council tax freeze, how it's strangling local government services. And yet, of the 8 councils freezing the council tax in this election, you know how many are Labour-led? All 8. This is Stirling. Stirling Labour, freeze your council tax. So don't come here talking about funding for local services when it's your councils failing to raise the money we need for our schools.
Kezia Dugdale.
From the First Minister, who has cut £170 million out of local services this year alone. And if education was her top priority, then she would be listening to the teachers across Scotland who are crying out for help. Blackhall Primary School in Edinburgh felt the need to email all parents. The email said this: "As you may be aware, there is currently a national shortage of teachers. This is making it challenging for head teachers around the country who are trying to fill vacant posts or indeed cover classes. There is a teacher shortage in Scotland. So will the First Minister be honest? How many schools are struggling like Blackhall? Just how many teacher vacancies are there across the whole of Scotland?"
First Minister.
John Swinney, myself, this government, have never shied away from the issue that Scotland, like many countries right now, have an issue with teacher recruitment. That is one of the reasons why we have increased the intake to teacher training, to train more teachers to work in our schools and close the attainment gap. The fact of the matter is, it is this SNP government that is investing in local services. Whatever Kezia Dugdale tries to say, there is £400 million available extra in this financial year for council services. And the question for Labour is this: if they don't think there is enough money for council services, why are there 8 Labour-led councils going into this election promising to freeze the council tax? Maybe Kezia Dugdale will give us a straight answer to that straight question.